The red on-air light is the only thing glowing in the pitch-black studio. It cuts through the darkness like a warning sign. Usually, this specific hour of television is reserved for the loud, chaotic noise of shouting matches, political debates, and the kind of aggressive interviews that go viral for all the wrong reasons. But tonight, the studio is silent. It isn't the silence of an empty room. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of a held breath. Across the glass desk sits the man who swore on his mother's soul that he would never set foot in this room again. This is the man who spent the last 3 years calling the host a bully, a racist, and a liar, Prince Harry. But the man sitting in that chair doesn't look like the defiant prince we've seen on magazine covers. He looks different. The golden California tan is gone, replaced by a ghostly translucent pallor. He is unshaven, his eyes are rimmed with red, and he looks like a man who hasn't slept in a week. Or perhaps he looks like a man who has finally woken up from a 10-year coma and is horrified by the world he sees. He doesn't say hello. He doesn't ask for a glass of water. He doesn't even make eye contact with the camera crew. He simply reaches into a battered brown leather satchel resting by his feet. His hands are trembling slightly as he pulls out a stack of papers so thick it looks like an old-fashioned phone book. It's bound tight with heavy industrial rubber bands bulging at the sides. He lifts it and drops it onto the glass desk. Thud. The sound is heavy. It echoes in the quiet studio like a gavel hitting a block, signaling a final judgment. Piers Morgan, a man who has made a career out of never being at a loss for words, stares at the pile. For the first time in 30 years of broadcasting, he is completely speechless. He looks at Harry then, down at the chaotic stack of papers, then back at Harry. Harry leans into the microphone. His voice isn't the polished, media-trained voice we're used to. It's raspy dry and sounds like it's scraping against his throat. He says 5 words that change everything. You were right about everything. This isn't an interview. This is a surrender. And that stack of papers, that is the weapon. Harry pushes the pile across the desk toward his former nemesis. 300 pages. He says, his voice barely a whisper. I call it the exit file. It's the divorce petition, the evidence, the receipts, the recordings. It's everything I found in the safe when she was in Los Angeles last week. Piers reaches out almost hesitantly and touches the top page. The title is typed in bold black ink, Project Awakening, a timeline of deception. Why me? Piers asks, his voice unusually quiet, stripped of its usual bravado. Why bring this to me? Because, Harry answers, his eyes hollow and haunting. You were the first one she ghosted. You were the canary in the coal mine. I didn't listen then. I'm listening now. I want you to read it to them. Read it to the world. Burn it all down. Tonight, we aren't just breaking news. We are breaking the simulation. The Duke of Sussex has defected from the narrative. He didn't come empty-handed. He brought the black box from the crash site of his marriage to show us exactly how the plane went down. The first section of the dossier is tabbed in bright red. It's titled, The Infiltration. Piers opens the file and the camera zooms in on the pages. The text is dense, chaotic, filled with dates, timestamps, and transcripts that look like they belong in a police evidence locker, not a royal diary. We start at the beginning, Piers says, looking directly into the lens, his face grave. Harry, you're telling me that before you even met, there was a plan, that this wasn't a serendipitous romance? Harry nods slowly. It wasn't fate, Piers. It was a funnel, and I was the target. What follows is a dissection of a relationship that the world thought was a fairy tale, but the documents suggest was a calculated operation. Piers flips to page 42. The header reads, Surveillance and Data Collection. The air in the studio grows thick with tension. We aren't dealing with emotions here. We are dealing with what looks like industrial espionage. Harry sits motionless, staring at a spot on the floor as if he is reliving the exact moment he found these documents in the hidden safe. This is chilling, Piers says, scanning the page, his eyebrows shooting up. Harry, these are transcripts. These are verbatim transcripts of private conversations between your brother William and your father the King. Conversations that took place in Nottingham Cottage in Kensington Palace, in rooms that were swept for bugs by security services. She didn't need bugs, Harry mutters, a dark look crossing his face. She was the bug. The file reveals a level of intrusion that is almost impossible to believe. It alleges that Meghan wore recording devices hidden in her jewelry, in her coat lapels, and even taped devices to the underside of heavy oak tables during private family summits. The Sandringham Summit, the historic moment where Harry negotiated his exit from the royal family, was recorded. The shouted, tearful arguments with William in the kitchen over tea were recorded. Every moment of vulnerability was captured. She has it all, Harry says, his voice devoid of emotion. Hard drives, terabytes of audio, she called it her insurance policy. She told me she was keeping a diary for history to protect our legacy. She wasn't writing a diary, Piers. She was building a wiretap archive. Piers holds up a photo included in the file. It shows a grainy close-up of a pair of diamond earrings Meghan wore to a garden party. Circled in red marker is a tiny, almost invisible anomaly in the setting. A microphone, Piers asks, incredulous. A receiver, Harry corrects. She was feeding audio to someone outside the gates. Someone was listening in real time. She was broadcasting the monarchy. The dossier lists the file names found on the private server Harry accessed. The names are brutal in their simplicity. Project, Air, Argument, .mp3, Kate, Crying, Bridesmaids, .wav, Queen, Final, Warning, .mp3. She weaponized my family's trust. Harry says, his voice finally breaking, tears welling in his eyes. I shouted at them. I accused them of leaking stories to the press. I told William he was paranoid, that he was crazy for suspecting her. And all the while, the leak was sleeping in my bed. She was recording my grief to sell it to Netflix. But as shocking as the audio surveillance is, it was only the beginning. Because if you want to understand the true motive, you don't listen to the tapes. You follow the money. And what Harry found in the financial records makes the wiretaps look like child's play. Follow the money, Piers says, turning to the financial section of the 300-page beast. This section is the thickest part of the file, heavy with bank statements, international wire transfers, and tax documents. The tab reads, the Archewell Audit. We were told that Archewell was about compassion. Piers says, his voice rising with righteous indignation. We were told it was about uplifting communities, about vaccines, about making the world a better place. But Harry, looking at this spreadsheet, this looks like a laundering operation. Harry rubs his face with his hands, looking exhausted. I didn't look at the books, Piers. I trusted the business managers. Her business managers. The ones she brought from Hollywood. The dossier outlines a complex, dizzying web of LLCs, limited liability companies, registered in opaque jurisdictions like Delaware and Wyoming. The names are perfectly curated to sound benevolent, loving kindness. Holdings, LLC Compassion in Action Incorporated, Mama Bear Ventures. 95%, Harry says flatly. Excuse me. Piers pauses, finger on a line item. 95% of the donations. Harry explains, the shame evident in his tone. It didn't go to charity. It went to administrative costs. It went to travel. It went to wardrobe. It went to brand maintenance. It went to PR firms. Piers reads from a specific line item on page 1 to 12. January 2022, Crisis Management Retainer, Sunshine Sachs, $2.5 million, paid from the Archewell Foundation General Fund. Piers slams his hand on the desk, the glass rattling. Donors thought they were buying vaccines for Africa. They were buying positive press for Meghan Markle to cover up her bullying allegations. But the most damning evidence is a transfer labeled the Doria dividend. Piers traces the line with his finger, his eyes narrowing. There is a monthly transfer here, $10,000 every single month, going to a senior care facility management company owned by Doria Ragland. It's the silence fee, Harry admits, looking down. Mom isn't just a grandma. She's on the payroll. The yoga teacher life is a front. She's the CFO of the grift. Harry points to a specific document near the bottom of the pile. It's a contract for the Archetypes podcast. Read the clause at the bottom, Harry says. Piers squints at the fine print. Clause 44. All intellectual property, including interviews conducted by the Duke of Sussex, shall remain the sole property of the Duchess. The Duke is classified as talent for hire with no equity stake. Piers gasps. You are an employee in your own marriage. I was a prop. Harry corrects, a bitter smile touching his lips. I was the mascot. She sold the tickets, she kept the gate receipts, and I was just the guy in the costume waving at the crowd. The financial betrayal is massive, but it pales in comparison to the personal deception. Because while Harry was being fleeced financially, he was being erased paternally. The next section of the file contains the secret that Harry calls the nuclear button. The studio falls silent again. Piers hesitates before opening the next section. It is sealed with a separate piece of red tape unlike the others. The label is handwritten by Harry in shaky block letters, "The Children." A Harry Piers starts his tone softening significantly. "This is the nuclear button. Once we say this, there is no going back." "Are you sure?" Harry looks up. His eyes are wet, but his jaw is set. "The world needs to know why I left. I didn't leave because of the press. I left because I found the medical files." Piers cuts the tape with a penknife. This section doesn't contain bank accounts or wiretaps. It contains emails between Meghan and a specialized fertility clinic in Los Angeles. It contains production schedules. It contains photos of prosthetics. The moon bumps. Piers whispers, the realization dawning on him. The conspiracy theorists? The internet sleuths? They were right. Harry doesn't say yes or no. He just points to an email dated January 2019 when Meghan was supposedly pregnant with Archie. Subject production schedule trimester 3. From M. Markle to redacted prop master. The silicone mold for month 7 is too heavy. I need the lightweight version for the Fiji tour. And make sure the strap is invisible this time. The cameras are 4K. She treated it like a role. Harry says, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and grief. I was there. I thought I felt them kick. But looking at these, she was managing the optics of the bump, like she managed a wardrobe change. The file also contains a document regarding the birth certificates. The doctor, Harry says, the doctor who signed Archie's birth certificate, look him up. He doesn't exist. It was a ghost signature. Why? Piers asks, leaning in. Why fake it? Why play games with the birth of your own children? I control, Harry answers instantly. If the palace doctors were involved, the royal family would have custody. There is an old law, Piers. The monarch has custody of the grandchildren. They would have oversight. By doing it her way, the Hollywood way, the secret way, she owns the children. They are her assets. They are her leverage. If I ever tried to leave, the threat was always the same. She takes them to America, and I never see them again. Piers stares at the page, horrified. So the secrecy around the births, the refusal to stand on the hospital steps, it wasn't about privacy. It was about the reveal, Harry says. She didn't want the doctors to see that the timeline didn't match. She stole the birthright of my children and turned it into a reality TV plot twist. This revelation changes everything we thought we knew about their exit. It wasn't about protecting the kids from the flashbulbs. It was about hiding the truth of their origin. But the deception didn't stop at the children. While she was staging a family life, she was organizing a digital army to destroy the real one. Piers turns the page to a section that looks like a war room map. It is covered in graphs, IP addresses, and lists of Twitter handles. The tab reads, The Bot Farm. For years, Piers begins, you told me the British press was toxic. You told me social media was a cesspool of hate against your wife. You told the world you were victims of online bullying. But this suggests the call was coming from inside the house. The Sussex squad. Harry says, spitting the name out like a curse. I thought they were fans. I thought they were just passionate defenders. I didn't know they were on the payroll. The dossier contains invoices from a shadowy digital marketing firm in Silicon Valley, a company known for astroturfing, the practice of creating fake grassroots movements to sway public opinion. Invoice Nafuro 4009 Service. Service sentiment analysis and counter-narrative deployment. Target the Princess of Wales. Kate Middleton. Objective. Amplify Rose Hanbury rumors. Cost $50,000. $50,000, Piers says, stunned. She paid for it. She paid for the hate against Catherine, against your own sister-in-law. She approved the tweets, Harry says, shaking his head in disbelief. I found the drafts in her sent folder. She would write the nastiest, most vile rumors about William and Kate, send them to the bot farm, and say, "Deploy at 9:00 a.m." Then she would come downstairs, make me breakfast, and cry about how mean the tabloids were to her. It was psychological warfare, Piers, and I was the one comforting the sniper. Piers holds up a graph showing a massive vertical spike in anti-monarchy tweets. This spike here, it correlates exactly with the Queen's death. She wanted to burn it down, Harry whispers. She knew the Queen was the only thing holding the popularity together. When Granny died, Meghan gave the order, "Attack the king." She wanted Charles to fail. She wanted the monarchy to collapse so we could be the alternative court in America. It was a coup, Piers realizes. A digital coup d'etat. And I was the face of it, Harry says, looking down at his hands. I was the one going on TV talking about unconscious bias, lecturing my family while she was paying trolls to call my father a racist. I was the distraction. I was the smokescreen for the demolition crew. The level of coordination is terrifying, but an operation this complex needs a manager. It needs an architect. And that brings us to the figure lurking in the background, the one person Harry never questioned. We touched on this earlier, Piers says, flipping to the penultimate section. But we need to go deeper. The mother, Doria Ragland. The tab reads, "The handler." The world sees Doria as the quiet, dignified mother in the background. Piers says, the only member of her family she didn't discard. The only one allowed at the wedding. Why was everyone else cut off but Doria stayed? Because Doria knows where the bodies are buried, Harry says darkly. Because Doria helped dig the holes. The file contains a background check on Doria that Harry commissioned himself only a week ago using a private investigator independent of the firm. It reveals a history that was scrubbed from the internet with military precision. A bankruptcy, Harry lists off, disappearances, and a missing 10 years. She wasn't making candles, Harry says, pointing to a gap in the timeline. She was in prison. Prison? Piers exclaims. For what? Financial fraud? Harry claims, pointing to a dusty court docket copy. But the record was sealed. Who sealed it? Meghan's lawyers. They bought Doria's silence. They bought her image. The yoga mom with the dreadlocks. That's a costume, Piers. Doria is the architect. Harry points to a chain of emails between Meghan and Doria dating back to 2016, right after Harry and Meghan met. From Doria to Meghan. Don't give it up yet. Make him wait. Play the victim. He loves the broken bird. Remember Diana. Be Diana. Piers reads the email out loud, a chill running down his spine. Be Diana. Your mother-in-law told your wife to cosplay your dead mother to seduce you. It was the playbook, Harry says, his voice devoid of hope. Doria studied the tapes. She coached Meghan on the mannerisms, the head tilt, the sad eyes looking up from beneath the lashes, the biting of the lip. They rehearsed it. Doria was the director, Meghan was the actress, and I was the audience of one. So when Doria sits in the back of the car looking tearful, she's checking the engagement numbers on her phone, Harry says. She takes 10% of everything, 10% of Netflix, 10% of Spotify. She isn't a grandmother Piers. She's the agent. This recontextualizes the entire saga. Harry wasn't fighting for his wife against his family. He was being managed by a mother-daughter team running the most profitable long con in royal history. Piers reaches the final page of the dossier. It isn't a typed document. It isn't a graph. It is a handwritten letter on plain white paper. The ink looks fresh, perhaps only a few hours old. This is it, Harry says, standing up slowly. The interview is over, but the message isn't. This is the only thing in the pile that I wrote. Piers looks at the letter. It is addressed to Meghan. Do you want to read it? Piers asks. No, Harry says, buttoning his jacket. You read it. I'm done talking to her. She watches your show anyway. She watches everything. Piers clears his throat. He looks directly into the camera, addressing the Duchess of Sussex directly across the ocean in Montecito. Meghan. Piers reads, his voice steady and lethal. The game is over. I found the safe. I found the tapes. I found the money. I know about the yachts. I know about the microphones. I know you never loved me. You loved the title. You loved the cameras. You loved the chaos. I gave you my soul. I gave you my family. I gave you my country. And in return, you gave me a script. I am taking the children. I am taking my life back. And I am taking the one thing you can't survive without the victimhood. You aren't the victim, Meg. You are the villain. And I am finally the heavy. Goodbye. H. Piers places the letter gently on top of the stack. It feels like placing a lid on a coffin. Harry, Piers says. What happens now? Harry picks up his empty satchel. He looks lighter. The weight that was on his shoulders is on the desk now. Now, Harry says, walking toward the exit of the dark studio. Now I go home to London to Pa, and I beg for forgiveness. He stops at the heavy steel door and looks back at Piers one final time. You can keep the file, Piers. Publish it. Publish every damn page. Harry walks out into the darkness. The door clicks shut. Piers Morgan turns to the camera, his hand resting on the 300-page bomb that is about to detonate the world. A wolfish grin spreads across his face. You heard the man, Piers says. We're going to need a bigger show. He taps the file. Stay tuned. We start reading page 1 right now.